Tesla's Cybertruck has been hitting the news headlines recently, starting at $39,000. It's not cheap compared to some of the close petrol or diesel comparators. But what about the main reason why someone would want to buy a Cybertruck? Well, that's the electric drivetrain. And also, what about fuel cell technologies and some of the other alternatives that we could well see emerge in the years to come? How about the sort of metals we should be looking at in terms of those in the mining sector that could benefit from the progress we are seeing along this line? Well, let's ask SP Angel mining analyst and partner of the group, John Meyer. John, welcome. I want to go first of all with the Cybertruck. You've done some analysis as to some of the reasons as to why people might want to buy the Cybertruck. The reason why we contacted you in the first place, because I came to you to say, well, surely the sheer weight of these batteries would make it almost impossible, especially the multi-wheel drive option which Tesla have given us. That is presumably extremely heavy, isn't it?
Well, yes, it does weigh something, that's for sure. And we've done a direct comparison between the Cybertruck and the Ford F150, which has always been the best-selling truck in the United States ever since 1985. And Ford have done a great job with the F150. In fact, it is surprisingly light these days. It comes in at about 2.5 tons, whereas the Cybertruck is about half a ton heavier. Not a surprise though, maybe because the Tesla Cybertruck is using this special steel, which is effectively armor plated, and heavy glass, which is also impact resistant. Although Elon Musk had an embarrassment when the window did break, but they reckon the window broke because the guy hit the car with the sledgehammer first before they threw the steel ball at the window, and they think the window got cracked at the bottom. But effectively, this is a very, very strong vehicle, which is what automotive manufacturers aspire to, is to create a very stiff frame and a very strong frame. And of course, that's really good. In America, where people shoot each other on a fairly regular basis, it's quite nice to have something like the Cybertruck. It's a bigger truck. It's got a bigger payload area, and there are other benefits to it, I think. So it's got a lot of battery in it. It's about 450 kilos of battery weight. And then the motors in there are beefed up too. So I mean, it should have a lot of power in it.
Yeah. What about the other thing we've spoken about, the fact that you have to charge these regularly? Mostly it's trickle charged as well. You can't get a fast charge of these batteries. Plus the fact is that they take up so much bulk within the vehicle. I mean, batteries are still enormous, aren't they, the electric vehicle batteries?
Well, I reckon you will be able to get a fast charger for this. But I mean, any regular owner would prefer to trickle charge. You get 250-mile range on the basic version. And that's great because it's going to cost you not much per mile. In fact, it'll cost you about 20% of the cost per mile as it would to drive the Ford F150 by our calculation if you were to compare the two in the UK. So it's a massive saving if you're doing a lot of mileage. And we know these batteries, the Tesla batteries, last really well these days. So they've improved the batteries so much that there is a guy who's driven over 1 million miles now, and on the last battery pack, I think he's done about 750,000 miles, and that's been verified by the Guinness Book of World Records. So huge strides being made in the manufacturing processes, and the reliability of the equipment. And let's face it, in an electric vehicle, it's so much simpler than a gasoline or diesel vehicle. You don't have an exhaust pipe or a gearbox or a conventional engine. You don't have to have a cooling, radiators, even power steering. All that lot gets chucked out. All you've got is electric motors, an electric control system, and a battery pack. It's very simple.
There are other methods of driving this new sort of generation of vehicle, aren't there? There's the fuel cell technology, which I'm interested in. In fact, you brought along a fuel cell here for us to look at. Now, I don't know how many of these you would need to replace the power provided in a normal Tesla battery, but my understanding is that fuel cell technology comes in a far more compact way. You're able to deliver power in a quicker and easier way using this sort of technology. So how does it work, first of all?
You put hydrogen in, you mix it with oxygen. That then gives you electrons, which you collect on the plates within the fuel cell. Those plates are coated with graphite and platinum, and so that the platinum costs on the new fuel cells maybe $50 to $100 per kilowatt, and And if you're feeding it with hydrogen, which is just a nice, clean energy source, that should work really well. And all it produces is water vapor. So that's fantastic. I mean, so this would give you a regular power feed. You could either feed that power directly into a battery pack, as in a Tesla, to give you extra range, or you could use it for charging off-site, or you could use it directly as your sole fuel, your sole energy supply source within the car, and that's done by Toyota and Hyundai, who both have fuel cell models.
But Tesla's not going down this route, or certainly no indications at the moment. Is that correct?
I'm not aware that they're going for fuel cells just yet. I think they're just sticking to plain, simple battery technology, and there's a lot less to go wrong there. And the great thing is, you're driving a Tesla truck at just over 3 tons, which, let's face it, is just what your average Range Rover weighs by the time you've added on a few bits and pieces. You get every time you hit the brakes, you get quite a lot of that energy back again. You'll store 60–65% of that energy back into the battery, and you'll be able to use that again to start, when you're taking off from the lights or whatever you're doing. So you have benefits to using battery technology which you don't get from other things.
You brought along another electric battery. This reminds me a bit of, we've seen this before actually, it's almost like a bit of toast. But this is incredible. This is very light. Presumably this itself, by itself, doesn't deliver much energy, but this is part of the new sort of fuel cell electric battery.
This battery delivers around 450 watt-hours per kilogram, and that's very high energy density. It's 3, 4, 5 times the energy density of your standard Tesla battery, for example. And Tesla produces good batteries. So this is for use in aircraft, and it's also intended for use in buses in cities in Brazil, for example, where all the transport's managed by buses and they're very polluted. And it would make a very good and efficient source of energy for driving electric buses. And they run around town and then they recharge overnight. So, I mean, it's a good solution, but it's a very expensive battery. Now, it may be that if the manufacturers, who we know, can reduce the production cost enough, because at the moment these are handmade, but if they can automate that production line, the battery cost could come down, and then the size of the battery pack for your Tesla Cybertruck or something like that could become much smaller and much lighter, or you could go for something with much longer range. So what I'm saying here is battery packs are going to get much better over time, and a lot of that is actually down to the quality of the materials going into the batteries. Now, we saw this at BMW say this in their promotion. It's because of the quality of the materials going into the battery that they're getting better performance.
This is the argument, isn't it, for not actually taking up the offer on the market these days for electric vehicles, because they're very expensive, very heavy, they're time consuming, they take ages to charge. The next generation is going to be where the value is, and the opportunity and the usability, I think, as much as anything else.
Absolutely. I think we are going to see huge improvement, not just in the batteries, where I can see the power density in the batteries increasing by at least 2 times over the next 10 years, but also in the performance you get out of the electric motors, and also the regenerative braking. So we're already seeing significant performance improvement in electric motors, and it may be that you can go along to Tesla or some other manufacturer and say, I'd like to buy a more efficient motor for better fuel economy, or something that just gives you more power or more driving range. It would generally make sense. So probably more neodymium in the batteries, neodymium in the motors, right. Better quality graphite in the batteries. And other components in there. So the batteries have got lithium, nickel, a little bit of cobalt still in there, not much. That cobalt is being reduced all the time, but better quality graphite is the key thing, I think.
You've got a little bit of graphite you've brought along here. I think this is what that is, isn't it?
Yeah, this is from a company called Talga. In fact, that piece of graphite has been carved directly out of the deposit where they mine this in Sweden. But that's just the beginning of the story. This then has to be ground down and purified slightly, because it's quite pure to start with. It is the world's highest grade graphite mine. But also it has to be spheronized. So it's the shape of the graphite particle is critical to the performance of the battery.
Let's take it on to the reason why we've invited you in, I guess, is to talk about some of the metals associated with this business. We were talking before we went to air about the price of copper. Let's bring up this share price, if we go, or the price of copper, the commodity itself. This goes back to 2017, actually, so we've seen this great big hump throughout the middle of last year. We were trading at nearly 7,500. Here we are now closer to 5,900. If there is the potential, as we hear from not just you but others in the industry, that this is the future, and copper, as I know, having again spoken to you a number of times about this, is going to be one of the really major metals used. Why is copper not seeing any traction at these levels?
Well, first, the world is not installing enough power electric chargers for these electric batteries at the moment. But the global economy has slowed a bit. That's because of Trump's trade war, and hedge funds and other investors who normally play in the copper market and buy copper haven't been there. They say, oh, we see the potential for a global slowdown, which is happening. Maybe even, I don't think we're looking for a global recession just yet. And copper comes off as a result of that. I do think the Chinese State Reserve Bureau are quietly buying copper, because that's what they do when the price is lower. We've certainly seen interesting Chinese individuals buying or corporations buying nickel, and we think that's stocking up ahead of the requirement for more batteries. I'm sure they've certainly been running around the world buying up cobalt in recent years in mines. If you can't buy cobalt in the market, which is very difficult, the next place to go to is to go and buy the cobalt mines. And certainly the Chinese were very active buying cobalt miners in the Congo, for example, and buying copper producers around the world that also produce some cobalt as well. But as I say, I think cobalt will become less and less important going forwards. Copper will be important because we're going to have to recable a lot of our cities in order to supply enough electricity for millions of electric cars. And they will come, because policymakers are going to increase the cost of driving conventional vehicles in cities until people change.
Yeah. Okay. All right, John, we'll have to leave it. Thanks for bringing in all these bits for us today with a look at the Cybertruck and the electric vehicle industry. That was partner from SP Angel, John Meyer.